The fluorescent lights of the delivery room are still humming when Marcus Adeyemi walks through the door. Not rushing, not breathless. Not the way a man walks when he's been waiting 9 months for this moment. He walks in the way he enters boardrooms, measured, composed, already calculating. Jisoo is lying in the hospital bed, her dark hair damp against the white pillow, her face hollowed out by 18 hours of labor. 2 tiny boys are wrapped in blue cloth beside her. The room smells of antiseptic and something sacred. Her mother, Mrs. Yoon, sits in the corner with her hands folded in her lap, rosary beads wrapped around her fingers, eyes red from crying happy tears. The twins are breathing. They are perfect. They are alive. Jisoo looks up at her husband and tries to smile. Marcus looks at her for a long moment. His jaw shifts. His eyes travel, not to the babies, but to her. The fullness in her face. The softness of her body after carrying 2 human beings inside, so fat and ugly. The room doesn't just so fat and ugly. The room doesn't just go silent, it stops breathing. One of the twins begins to cry, as if the words disturbed even him. Mrs. Yoon's rosary beads freeze between her fingers. Jisoo doesn't scream. She doesn't throw something. She doesn't cry. She just looks at him, her eyes searching his face for a joke that never comes, for a softening that never arrives, for the man she married standing somewhere behind this one. He adjusts his cufflink, and that is when something inside Jisoo Yoon Adeyemi quietly, permanently, dies. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Now let's go back to where this story truly begins. Because no love story starts with cruelty. It starts with a bookstore, a rainy Thursday, and a woman who dared to disagree. Atlanta, 7 years earlier. Marcus Adeyemi is 31 years old, and already the kind of man that rooms rearrange themselves around. 6'2", built like someone who still remembers hunger, wearing a charcoal blazer over a black turtleneck. He has 14 employees, a growing logistics contract with 3 southeastern distributors, and an almost pathological relationship with control. His father drove a bus. His grandfather picked cotton. Marcus decided early that neither of those stories would end with him. He's at a small independent bookstore in Midtown for a panel discussion on African economic diaspora. He wasn't planning to come. His assistant bought him the ticket as a networking opportunity, and he figured he'd stay 20 minutes. He's been there 45 when a woman in the 3rd row raises her hand and calmly dismantles the panelists' entire argument about foreign aid. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't perform. She just speaks, precise, unhurried, fluent English, carrying the faint architecture of another language beneath it. Marcus turns to look at her. Jisoo Yoon is 26, wearing a second-hand blazer over a white blouse, her black hair pulled back simply. She has a notebook in her lap, covered in handwriting so small it looks like a different language. She is not beautiful in the way magazines teach men to recognize beauty. She is beautiful the way Stillwater is beautiful, deep, quiet, and entirely indifferent to whether you notice. She catches Marcus staring and turns back to the panel without acknowledgement. He smiles for the first time all week. After the event, he approaches her near the economics section. "You embarrassed that man," he says. I corrected a flawed premise, she says, pulling a book from the shelf without looking at him. There's a difference. You didn't even look nervous. I wasn't. She glances at him then. A short, assessing look. Were you? He laughs, genuinely, the kind of laugh that surprises him. Her name is Ji-Soo. She came to Atlanta on a Korean government scholarship to study public health policy. She works 2 part-time jobs, a coffee shop in the mornings and a university library in the evenings. She sends half of everything she earns back to her mother in Daegu. She has no interest in who Marcus Adeyemi is, what he drives, or what his company is worth because she's never heard of him. To a man who has spent 3 years being wanted for his money, this is almost unbearably attractive. They talk for 2 hours. The bookstore closes around them. He asks if she wants to get dinner. She says, I have a 6 a.m. shift. He says, breakfast then, tomorrow. She considers this with the same careful deliberateness she gives everything. Okay, she says, but I choose the place. She chooses a small Korean diner on Buford Highway where the menu is entirely in Korean, and the owners know her by name. He eats something he can't pronounce and asks her to explain every dish, and she does, patiently. And he realizes midway through the meal that he hasn't thought about his company once since he sat down. He calls his assistant from the parking lot afterward. Clear my Saturday. For what? I don't know yet. They date for 14 months. He learns her rhythms. She wakes before dawn. She reads 4 newspapers before 9 a.m. She speaks 3 languages and is learning a 4th. She is deeply, almost obsessively kind to strangers, tipping generously, holding doors, remembering the names of every barista, every doorman, every person invisible to most people in his world. She learns his rhythms too. He can't sit still after 9 p.m. He replays conversations in his head for days afterward, searching for what he missed. He is generous with money and stingy with vulnerability. He says, I'm fine the way other people say. I don't want to talk about it. She calls him on it once, early in their relationship, sitting on the floor of his apartment surrounded by takeout containers, both of them working on their laptops at 10 at night. You know, it's okay to need things, she says without looking up. I don't need anything, he says. She looks up then. That's the most frightening thing you've ever said. He doesn't answer, but he thinks about it for a week. She completes her master's degree with distinction. She gets a job offer from a public health nonprofit. She turns down a second offer, a more prestigious one, because the first organization works directly with immigrant mothers in underserved communities. And that matters more to her than prestige. He proposes at the bookstore where they met. No cameras, no flash mob, just a ring in his jacket pocket and the 2 of them alone after closing time, standing between the economics section and world history. She cries. First time he has ever seen her cry. You remembered, she says. Of course I remembered. They marry quietly. Small ceremony. Her mother flies in from Daegu. His parents come from their house in Stone Mountain. His business associates are politely baffled. His publicist suggests a bigger event for brand alignment. He tells her no and hangs up. One of his investors, a silver-haired man named Gerald Whitmore, pulls him aside at a dinner 2 months after the wedding. She seems lovely, Gerald says, in the voice of a man who means something else entirely. She is, Marcus says. Different background, though? Culturally? Just something to think about. Optics matter when you're growing at your pace. Marcus looks at him levelly. Are you finished? Gerald chuckles nervously. Of course, just looking out. Marcus nods and walks away. Later that night, he tells Jisoo what Gerald said, and she's quiet for a moment and then says, Do you think he's right? No. Marcus says. Without hesitation, she leans her head on his shoulder, and for a while, that is enough. The company explodes. Adeyemi Logistics goes from regional player to national infrastructure, a government contract, then another, a feature in Forbes, a 30-second spot on CNBC. The office moves to a glass tower. The house gets bigger, the team gets larger, and something in Marcus gets smaller. Not dramatically, not all at once. The way erosion happens, quietly, invisibly, until one day the cliff edge is closer than you remember. He starts caring about how they look together at events. He books a stylist for her. Just for the big dinners, it's easier. He mentions once gently that she might want to tone up before a gala because photographers would be there. She looks at him strangely. You've never said anything like that before. I'm not saying anything bad. It's just, I know what it is, she says quietly. She goes to the gala in the dress she already owned. She is the most striking woman in the room, but he doesn't see that anymore. He sees the investors watching him. He sees the cameras. He sees an empire with a human face, and he started confusing his wife for part of the set design. When Jisoo becomes pregnant, he is excited, genuinely. He holds her hands. He talks to her stomach. He clears his schedule for the first ultrasound. But by the second trimester, something shifts. She is tired often. The nausea is relentless. She stops attending evening events. She works from home more. She's carrying twins, which means the physical changes come faster, more pronounced. One evening she comes downstairs in a comfortable house dress, and he looks at her and says nothing. But the look lasts a half-second too long, and she sees it. What? She says. Nothing, he says. You just, never mind. Say it. You've really let yourself go. She stares at him. I'm growing two people, she says. I know, he says, already moving toward this door. I just think you could make more of an effort. He leaves for a dinner she wasn't invited to. She sits at the kitchen table with her hands flat on her stomach for a very long time. If you're still watching up to now, type I'm still here in the comment section, because this story is about to cut deeper. The twins arrive at 37 weeks, 2 boys, 6 pounds each. Perfect lung, the doctor says. Jisoo's mother cries from the moment she arrives at the hospital. The nurses are warm. The room is private and expensive. Marcus arranged that much. And then Marcus walks in. We've already heard what he says. We've already seen her face. But what the cameras don't show, what no one in that room ever speaks about afterward, is what happens after he says it. He doesn't wait for a response. He spends 11 minutes in the room. He holds one twin briefly, stiffly, like something he's afraid of dropping. He takes one photo on his phone. He says he has a call at 6. He kisses her forehead, the forehead, not her lips, and he leaves. Mrs. Yun sits beside her daughter and takes her hand. Neither of them speaks for a long time. Finally, Jisoo says very quietly, Mom, did you hear what he said? Mrs. Yun squeezes her hand. In Korean, she says. I heard. Was he joking? Mrs. Yun doesn't answer. Jisoo looks at her two sons sleeping in their bassinets, boy 1 and boy 2, not yet named, breathing in that new trusting way that newborns breathe, like the world is still entirely safe. I'm going to name them, Jisoo says. Something strong. Yes, her mother says. Something that doesn't need permission. She names them Kofi and Daiwan. Kofi for Marcus's Ghanaian grandfather, whom he spoke of with the only tenderness she had ever seen in him. Daewon, a Korean name meaning great victory, because she already knew what was coming, and she wanted her sons to inherit the shape of triumph before they were old enough to understand defeat. Marcus comes home when the twins are 4 days old. He has brought flowers, expensive ones, the kind selected by someone else. He sets them on the kitchen counter. He looks at Jisoo, who is moving slowly, carefully, healing from childbirth the way the body quietly and brilliantly repairs itself. I want to apologize, he says. She looks at him. For the comment at the hospital, it was insensitive. Insensitive. The word floats between them like a boat that has lost its anchor. Was that an apology? She asks. I said I was sorry. You didn't. You said it was insensitive. He exhales. Jisoo, I'm under enormous pressure right now. The Singapore deal is falling apart. Gerald's group is threatening to pull out. I'm managing 43 employees. Marcus. Her voice is not raised, not trembling. It is the voice she uses at panels, at negotiations, at moments when she decides that precision matters more than emotion. I gave birth to your sons 4 days ago. I haven't slept more than 2 hours at a stretch. My body did something extraordinary, and you walked into that room, and the first words out of your mouth were about how I look. Silence. Is there anything about our sons you want to ask me? He blinks. Are they feeding well? Are they gaining weight? Do you know that Kofi holds his left fist up when he cries, and Daewon goes completely still right before he wakes up? Do you know any of this, Marcus? Because you were there for 11 minutes. He opens his mouth, closes it. The flowers are beautiful, she says. Thank you. And she picks up Kofi from the bassinet and walks to the nursery and closes the door softly. The weeks that follow are a careful, terrible performance. They share the house. They share the table sometimes. He plays with the twins occasionally, in the stiff, uncertain way of a man who loves his children from a distance. Not because he doesn't feel it, but because vulnerability has always felt like a structural weakness to him, like a crack in a load-bearing wall. He starts traveling more. Dubai, London, Lagos. He posts photos on his verified accounts, airport terminals, private jets, the warm blur of other people's cities. Sometimes there are other people in the photos, women who are polished and stunning and carefully positioned. His publicist calls Jisoo once, awkwardly, to ask if she'd be willing to do a joint interview. Just something quick, domestic, keeps the image warm. Jisoo says, I'll think about it. She never calls back. One evening, scrolling through her phone while nursing Daewon at 2 a.m., she finds a photo on a celebrity gossip account. Marcus on a yacht somewhere blue and glittering. Beside him is a woman named Chisholm. She'll learn the name later. A Lagos socialite and fashion entrepreneur. Gorgeous in the way that takes considerable effort and makes it look effortless. They are not touching in the photo. But they don't need to be. Jisoo stares at the photo for a very long time. Daewon finishes feeding and falls asleep against her chest. In the other room, Kofi begins to stir. She sets day one down. She picks up Kofi. She walks to the window. Outside, Atlanta breathes its nighttime breath. Distant sirens, the hum of highway, the orange-yellow wash of city light against low clouds. She thinks, I could confront him. I could cry. I could call my mother. I could check his phone. I could spend the next 10 years of my life waiting for him to choose me. Or she could choose herself. It is not a dramatic decision. It doesn't arrive with music. It arrives the way the most important decisions do, quietly, in the dark while holding a baby, exhausted beyond description. With nothing left to lose except the story she's been telling herself about who she needs in order to survive. She whispers to Kofi, I'm going to be okay. He blinks at her in the dark, trusting, completely trusting. We're going to be okay. She corrects herself. She doesn't leave immediately. She is strategic, patient. She was always patient. She starts walking in the mornings when the twins are with the nanny. First, just 20 minutes around the block. Then longer. Then she jogs. Not to punish herself back into a shape Marcus would approve of. She is ferociously, deliberately clear on this distinction. But because her body wants to move, and she has spent months not listening to it. She joins a postpartum support group at a community health center in Decatur. She almost doesn't go. She sits in the parking lot for 12 minutes before walking in. Inside, 7 women, all different ages, backgrounds, body types, all holding the same stunned, exhausted look she sees in her own mirror every morning. A woman named Tanya, a black woman from East Point, says on the first night, My husband said I didn't look the same anymore, and I thought I just had his baby. Of course I don't look the same. I'm more now. I'm more than I was before. Jisoo writes that down. She starts going every week. She starts talking haltingly at first, then with increasing frankness. She doesn't mention Marcus's name. She doesn't need to. The shape of her story is recognizable to every woman in that room. One night she gets home and finds Marcus in the living room, loosening his tie. And something about the way he doesn't look up when she walks in makes the last question she was holding on to finally dissolve. She sits across from him. Are you having an affair? She asks. He looks up. Something crosses his face, not guilt exactly. Something more complicated. The look of a man calculating which answer costs him less. I've been spending time with people who make me feel like myself, he says. That's not an answer. Jisoo. Marcus, yes or no? He sets down his glass. I haven't been happy, he says. Neither have I. Are you having an affair? The pause is its own answer. She nods slowly. She stands. I carried your sons, she says. I changed cities for you. I turned down opportunities for you. I stood in rooms full of people who thought I wasn't enough for you, and I smiled because I believed in you. Her voice doesn't break. It strengthens. I want you to sit with that. Not because I'm asking for anything. Just sit with what you chose. She goes to bed. He sleeps on the couch. By morning, he's gone to the airport. She starts recording videos, not polished, not planned. Just her face, her voice, her phone propped against a coffee mug at the kitchen table after the twins go down for the night. She talks about what it feels like to grow a human body and then be made ashamed of your own. She talks about postpartum silence. How no one tells you about the grief that comes after birth. Grief for your old body, your old self, The old version of your relationships. She talks about learning to eat again without fear. She talks about the morning she ran 3 miles and came home crying, not from pain, but from something that felt like reclamation. She posts the first video without a name, just a timestamp and a title. What they don't tell you after the twins come home. Within 48 hours, 40,000 views. Within a week, messages from women in 17 countries. She reads every single one. She tells Marcus about it at breakfast, one of the rare mornings he's home. He's scrolling through his phone. He glances up. Like a vlog thing? It's a platform, women sharing postpartum experiences. That's nice, he says, the way you say that's nice to a child who drew a picture. She looks at him evenly. It might become something. He nods without looking up. Sure, he says. Good hobby. She says nothing. She drinks her coffee. She stores the moment somewhere specific, and she does not forget it. She calls her platform Anchored, not a company yet. Just a name she chose because that's what she needed in those first dark weeks. Something to hold to. She films 3 videos a week. She partners with a postpartum therapist named Dr. Osei Bonsu, who has a practice in Midtown. She starts interviewing other women, a Korean-American mother of 3 in Los Angeles, a Nigerian woman who had postnatal psychosis and survived it, an Egyptian-American woman whose husband left 6 weeks after delivery and who built a catering company from her kitchen table. The community grows like it's been waiting. She hires her first employee, a young black woman named Imani, fresh out of Georgia State, brilliant at social media and deeply committed to the mission. 3 months later, 2 employees. 6 months later, a wellness brand approaches her about partnership. Meanwhile, Marcus's life is beginning to fray at the edges in ways he's too proud to acknowledge. The Singapore deal collapses. The Chisholm photos resurface in a British tabloid and get picked up by American entertainment blogs. His public image, carefully constructed over a decade as the dignified, grounded, self-made man, starts acquiring a different shape online. His publicist calls. We need a counter-narrative, she says. Something warm, domestic. Can we get Jisoo? No, Marcus says. Marcus. I said no. He knows, though. Even if he won't say it yet, he knows. The thing he kept trying to arrange around him, to improve, to mold into a better accessory, that thing was actually the architecture of his respectability. And he sent it away. At a board dinner in November, Gerald Whitmore, the same silver-haired man who worried about optics years ago, leans across the table and says quietly, You know, Marcus, people are starting to ask questions about stability, about judgment. Marcus picks up his wine glass. Are they? He says. Not a question. Jisoo was always well-liked, genuine, real, the kind of partner that adds to a man's... Gerald. Marcus sets the glass down. His voice is controlled, but something behind it is beginning to come apart. I will run my company, and I will handle my personal life. You focus on the returns. Gerald looks at him for a long moment and says nothing. Later that night, Marcus sits alone in his home office looking at Anchored's website, which now has 1.2 million followers and has been featured in Essence and a Korean-American women's publication he can't read, but whose tone he can interpret. In the corner of one of her recent videos, barely visible, 2 boys playing on the floor behind her. Kofi, day 1. He closes the laptop. He sits in the dark of a house that has never felt more like an achievement and never more like a failure. She leaves in the spring. She finds a 3-bedroom house in East Atlanta, nothing dramatic, with a back garden and good light and neighbors who don't recognize her name yet. She takes the twins, the car, and 4 boxes of books. She leaves the furniture, the art, the kitchen he had custom designed, the closet he had built, or a version of her that never quite existed. She tells him in person, sitting across from him at the dining room table, her hands flat on its surface. "I'm leaving." He nods slowly, as if he always knew. "I'm not doing this to punish you," she says. "I'm not doing this for leverage. I'm doing this because I will not raise our sons in a house where their mother is treated as optional. Jisoo, I want them to know what respect looks like from the beginning, not as a concept, as something they witness every day." "I can change," he says. And here's the thing. She believes him, maybe. She believes he believes it. But she has learned, slowly and painfully, the difference between a man who wants to change and a man who is changing. "Show them," she says. "Not me. Show Kofi and Daewon. Be the father they deserve. That's what I'm asking." She picks up her bag. "Call them every night. Come every weekend. Be present. Be honest. Don't let the empire be an excuse." She walks to the door. He says quietly, "I was afraid of you." She turns. "Of me? Of how real you were? How you didn't need anything from me. I didn't know what to do with that. I thought if I made you smaller..." He stops. His jaw tightens. "I thought if you needed me, it meant I mattered." She looks at him for a long time. "You mattered, Marcus. Before the money. In that bookstore. You mattered." Her voice is steady. Not cruel. Almost kind. But a man who tears down what he loves because he's afraid of losing it. He doesn't keep it. He just proves the fear right. She leaves. The door closes. Outside, the cherry trees on their street are blooming, pink and unreasonable and completely indifferent to human suffering. This is where we need you. Like this video right now and share it with someone who needs to hear this story. Because what happens next will change the way you see everything. 3 years pass. Anchored becomes Anchored Wellness. A full platform. Postpartum mental health resources. Maternal advocacy tools. A coaching program for women rebuilding after crisis. Ji-se hires 12 people. She moves into a proper office in Old 4th Ward, 2 blocks from where she used to walk alone in the early mornings when the boys were infants and she was still learning how to breathe. She speaks at hospitals, universities, community centers. She speaks in Seoul, in London, in Lagos. She testifies before a Georgia State Health Subcommittee on postpartum mental health funding. She is quoted in academic journals. She wins a Community Impact Award she cries through entirely, and then apologizes to the audience for crying, and they laugh and love her more. She does not speak about Marcus publicly, not once. When journalists ask, and they do ask, she says, "My marriage ended. My life, it did not." Marcus, watching from a distance he created, sees his wife, his former wife, becoming the kind of person whose absence reshapes a room. He shows up to every weekend with the boys. She was right. He had to be told to be present, and then he had to practice it. And then one day he realized he was no longer practicing. He was just a father. He takes them to games. He teaches Kofi to play chess. He learns that Daiwan is obsessed with marine biology, and he flies him to an aquarium in Baltimore and watches his son's face light up in front of the shark tank and feels something crack open in his chest that he doesn't have words for. He calls Jisoo that night from the hotel. He's extraordinary, he says. I know, she says. You did that. She's quiet a moment. We did that. The version of us that still believed in something. He doesn't know what to say. Good night, Marcus. Good night. The invitation to the Women in Power Summit in Chicago arrives 6 months before the event. Jisoo is the keynote. She spends 3 months on the speech. She drafts it, tears it up, drafts it again. She writes it in Korean first, which is how she thinks when she needs to be honest with herself. And then she translates it, keeping only what survives the crossing. She does not tell Marcus about it. He finds out from a notification on his phone, an article in a business journal. Anchored founder Jisoo Yunadayemi to keynote Chicago Summit. He stares at the notification for a long time. He buys a ticket under a different name. The ballroom seats 1,200 women. When Jisoo walks on stage, the applause is not the polite applause of obligation. It is the applause of recognition, the sound a crowd makes when they see someone carrying something they have also carried. She stands at the podium. She lets the room settle. Then she says, "The day I was called fat and ugly, 8 hours after giving birth, was the most important day of my life." Complete silence. Not because it was true. It was not true. My body had just done something ancient and astonishing and violent and holy. But that moment mattered because I believed him. And I want to talk about what it means. For a woman to hand a man the measuring tape for her own worth. In the 8th row, on the aisle, Marcus Adeyemi sits in a dark blazer with no cufflinks. His hands flat on his knees, oak, and he does not move. I spent years before that moment, slowly, quietly, agreeing that his discomfort with my realness was my problem to solve. Agreeing that my softness was something to apologize for. Agreeing that the woman he fell in love with needed to be refined into something more suitable. She pauses. And by the time I was lying in that hospital bed, I had already been so carefully diminished that when he finally said it out loud, part of me thought, of course. Of course. A sound moves through the room. Not a gasp. Something lower. A recognition. The work of healing was not losing weight. The work of healing was learning that I had given away my own authority and getting it back, inch by inch, morning by morning, video by video, conversation by conversation, sun by sun. She looks out at the room. I am not here because I survived a cruel man. Cruel moments are everywhere. I am here because I decided that the story he told about me was not the story I was living. I am here because I stopped asking for permission to take up space. The room rises. 1,200 women on their feet. Marcus claps with them. And for a man who has not cried in public since his grandfather's funeral, something in his eyes breaks loose and falls. She is backstage afterward, surrounded by staff and speakers and the warm chaos of a successful event, when she feels a presence behind her. She turns. He looks older, not badly, just inhabited. Like a house where someone has finally started living in all the rooms. The staff around her step back instinctively. He says, "I was afraid if I let you be everything you were, there'd be no room for me." She looks at him. No, she says. I was wrong. I know that too. I made you smaller because I didn't know how to be large enough. His voice is low. The boardroom composure is entirely gone. This is just a man. Just Marcus. The one from the bookstore, finally, after all this time. I was cruel because I was terrified. And I told myself it was about image and pressure and business, but it was about, I thought if you needed me, I mattered. And you never needed me, and I couldn't. He stops. She waits. I couldn't handle what that meant. She's quiet for a moment. In the distance, Kofi and Day One are with Mrs. Yun near the refreshment table. Kofi is trying to sneak a second dessert. Day One is reading the program with the focused intensity of a future scientist. You didn't lose me because I got bigger, she says finally. You lost me because I believed you. And then, and this is the part you need to understand. I stopped. I know. The day I stopped believing you was the day I became this. She gestures, not grandly, just toward the room, the stage, the life. So in a way, a small, devastating smile. You should thank yourself. He almost laughs, almost. Can we? He stops, starts again. I'm not asking for what we had. I understand that's gone. But is there a version of forward for them? He nods toward the boys. She follows his gaze. Day One has found Kofi and is explaining something to him emphatically. There has always been a forward for them, she says. That was never conditional on you deserving me. That was only ever conditional on you showing up for them. She turns back to him. And you have been. I've seen it. He exhales. Something releases. If you want to be in our lives, she says, become a man our sons can admire. Not a man they're impressed by. Not a man they fear. A man they can learn from. A pause. That's it. That's the only ask. He nods. She nods. And somewhere in the middle of a Chicago ballroom, between what they were and what they might still become, two people who loved each other badly and then loved themselves better. Agree, without a contract or a ceremony, to try. That night, on the drive back to the hotel with the twins asleep in the back seat, Jisoo drives with the windows down, the city lights of Chicago streaming past. Kofi stirs, half asleep, says, Mama, were you nervous on stage? A little, she says. You didn't look it. I know, she says, and smiles. Why not? She thinks about the bookstore, the hospital room, the 2 a.m. window, the morning she ran and cried, the first video she posted and then almost deleted. Every single morning she chose to be more than what someone else decided she deserved to be. Because I already know the story, she says. What story? The one where we're okay. Day One, apparently not asleep, says flatly from the back seat. That was very philosophical, Mom. She laughs so hard she has to pull over. The boys laugh too, not knowing exactly why, just following the sound of their mother's joy the way children do, the way they always will. Some men lose their wives to other men. Some lose them to time. Marcus Adeyemi lost his to something he never saw coming, to the version of her she became when she stopped waiting for him to see her clearly. He wanted her smaller. She became immovable, and the most painful, most clarifying truth of all is this. The man who called her ugly in that hospital room is the reason she built a movement. She would never thank him for it. She doesn't need to. But somewhere is the architecture of how the world works. The very wound he gave her became the door she walked through. And what waited on the other side was never about him at all. If this story moved you, subscribe to our channel right now so you never miss a story like this one. And before you go, drop a comment. Tell us, what would you have done in her place? Can love survive that kind of disrespect? And do you believe a man who finally understands what he destroyed deserves a second chance to be better? Not for her, but for himself. We read every comment, every single one. Our next story is already waiting for you. And trust us, you are not ready for it. Don't miss it.